Yeah. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi. My name is Robert Coffey. I work for Telia Company, based in Stockholm, but responsible for Eurasian networks. Maybe I would like to hear your view of how you expect Red Hat Openstack to develop with regard to kind of telco applications and telco level of performance and availability and all that kind of stuff that we maybe currently have challenges with the current kind of out-of-the-box OpenStack.
Sure. Well, first of all, it's nice that I can join you guys remotely. I'm sorry that I can't be here this time, but I'm glad that OpenStack Day has continued on. And I think they're all working together. In terms of OpenStack for telecoms, it's a really good question. Initially OpenStack started out with a focus on basically just doing kind of elastic virtualization in data centers for what we think of as what cloud was 7 years ago. Since then, we've definitely seen it go into a lot of different areas, and that's been a very interesting trend to watch, to see all of the different ways that infrastructure is being used now. One of the fastest growing areas is definitely around telecom usage. And I think that getting a lot of echo right now. I think that as you mentioned, there are definitely some differences in what a telecom may require from a deployment model or from an uptime standpoint, or from just even what kind of workloads they're running on top of it. We've seen a lot of engagement from telecom operators as well as vendors in the telco world and the OpenStack world to address some of those. And you mentioned Red Hat OpenStack. I know Red Hat and Canonical both have actually quite a number of telecom customers. And I think the other thing that's very interesting to see is how some of the operators are building tools to help solve some of these issues. So if you look at AT&T, for instance, or Verizon, this year they have done different demonstrations of tools that they have built to manage their OpenStack deployments and to provide reliability and stability for different use cases. OpenStack itself, in the core functions, is pretty stable, but when you start to talk about deploying it in 100+ locations like AT&T has done, or running specific low latency applications like Verizon does, then you need some other tools. So I think that in terms of how I think it's going to develop, we've been working with AT&T to get some of their tooling open source. The same thing for Verizon, and then also with OPNFV, which is another open source collaboration to get to the requirements that telecoms meet. And I think that what we'll see is by the end of this year, some of those things will be open source. And I hope that during next year, we will see kind of the next set of telecom operators adopting those beyond just the top ones like AT&T and Verizon and China Mobile that have more significant technical teams on staff to help them. So I think that's kind of the progression has been, core stability for OpenStack, development of these helper systems that telecoms need within the large telcos, and I think now it's getting those out of the large telcos and into the hands of everyone else.
Hello, Jonathan. Can you share your mind about the future of ecosystem of OpenStack?
Yeah, so the future of the ecosystem of OpenStack, I think, is it's very exciting. It's actually something that that I've been doing a lot of thinking about this year. I've traveled to a number of these OpenStack Day events and have met with hundreds of companies. And for me, I think there are kind of three trends that I see happening right now in OpenStack across different users and different companies. And the first trend is we call it composability. But it's the idea that that OpenStack is not just one thing, but it's really a set of services that you can put together and compose into different platforms that you may develop on top of. And I think that that's a really important shift in thinking about OpenStack that we've seen happen, because infrastructure is no longer just about virtual machines like I was talking about a minute ago. It's also about running telecom networks, or doing machine learning with GPUs, or doing edge networking for telecoms or retail locations, or different use cases like that. And so for machine learning, for instance, that's an area where we have a growing number of users doing deployments, and what they want there is not virtualization at all. They want physical machines with GPUs in them, and then they want to run some kind of application framework on top of that, and then a learning framework like TensorFlow or Caffe2 or whatever it might be. So I think the trend that we've seen is a trend where people are taking specific OpenStack services and combining them with other open source tools. So it might be Ironic plus Kubernetes plus TensorFlow, or it might be Neutron plus Nova and none of the storage options for a very small, compact customer premises equipment system that goes into a coffee shop. And so I think that's a trend that is impacting the software development, but also the ecosystem. Because I've seen companies who are starting up and they're focusing on just kind of a vertical that has a specific need to combine a number of different tools together, whether that's something like I said, Kubernetes plus Neutron plus Ironic, or even a full package that delivers a platform as a service, Cloudify, or different things like that. So I think that's the first trend. The other trend that I think we're seeing is on the adoption side, people used to often say, I'm going to be 100% in the public cloud, or I'm going to be 100% in the private cloud. I'm never going to go to the public cloud. And I don't ever hear people saying that anymore. Everyone plans to use multiple clouds, and they want to be able to move their workloads between them. And so the companies that I've seen who are kind of the most advanced on the usage side, they have already moved into a state where multi-cloud is their deployment model, and that is the way that they are running their applications. And so on the ecosystem side, tools that enable multi-cloud deployments, those are the companies that I think are actually doing really well right now. Companies who have focused on enabling the ability to have equivalent services in public clouds and private clouds, and to manage workloads between them, to do security across those kinds of environments. Those are companies that I think are also doing well. And I think the third area that I've seen a trend within both the adoption side and the ecosystem side is around operations. When OpenStack started, a lot of the companies in the ecosystem developed a product to install OpenStack, and that was the problem that they were trying to solve, was kind of installing OpenStack. But when you're talking about a technology like OpenStack or any of these other open source technologies, the ongoing operations is a much more difficult piece of running those systems than just installing them on the first day. And so the companies who focus on the life cycle of a cloud and the operations on day one and year 5, those are companies that I see doing well, and also customers and users that are happy and having success. So I think that thinking about how you combine different open source technologies, how you enable multi-cloud usage, and how you do it in a way that's sustainable across the lifetime of these technologies, that's where I'm seeing success in the OpenStack ecosystem, and also across the open source ecosystem overall.
Thank you very much for your attendance, Jonathan. My question is about the applications. I mean, especially what do you think about to improve the ecosystem of the OpenStack? How do you want to support the applications in only on software development part, or do you have some legacy application support? Do you think it's going to happen, or what is your expectation or view on this, the future of the applications on the OpenStack?
The application side is very important. It's obviously why people build clouds and run infrastructure, is to run applications on top of them. And I think there are kind of two parts to this. The clouds have started from the beginning with APIs to develop dynamic applications that kind of automatically control their infrastructure. And things that are well suited to that are obviously greenfield applications that you build from scratch, and systems that kind of assume that there's dynamic infrastructure underneath them. So early on, we saw a lot of deployments that met that profile. Continuous integration and deployment and new application development. Those are the things that the people were using OpenStack for initially. But I think that similar to what I've said a couple of times, the concept of what a cloud is has definitely shifted over the last 5-6 years. And people want to run applications that expect stability out of their infrastructure. And if you look at the last 2 years of development in the OpenStack software, a lot of the features that have gone in have been about stability, and it's really been a focus on maturity for running those kinds of applications. So things like live migration and HA support have all come in the last couple of years, in the last few releases. So I think that that has been a focus of the upstream development team, as well as the ecosystem providers. Looking forward, I think that one of the things that's interesting is what we are seeing now, I think, in terms of ongoing application development. So yes, we support legacy applications, and I think that support is only going to continue to get better. But as you look at the next generation of applications that are being developed, I think that the infrastructure APIs, whether it's OpenStack or Amazon or Azure, I think those are actually becoming less important as developers look for a higher level of API to write their applications against. And those are things like Cloud Foundry and Kubernetes and Cloudify and those other container and PaaS systems. So what we've been doing this year is working with some of those other communities to make sure that we have good integration between those systems, so that if you want to stand up a Kubernetes environment, you can, and it's going to scale and run and operate very well on top of OpenStack. If you want to run Cloud Foundry on top of OpenStack, you can do that, and it's going to run very well. Cloud Foundry just had their Cloud Foundry Summit in Europe, and a significant portion of the Cloud Foundry user base runs on top of OpenStack, and so that's an important target for them, and it's an important target for us. So I think that yes, we'll continue to see legacy application support, and I think that a big focus going forward is also going to be how do you support these next generation application tools, because I think that's where a lot of software developers are going to be moving over the next 5 years.
One more question?
Hello, thank you very much. So my question is about the automation that companies are doing to install and manage OpenStack. What do you think about that, and is it good for the product to be better, or is there any plan from the community to do some automation rather than relying on companies to automate and then offer support on top of that?
Yeah, that's another really good question. Like I was saying earlier, I think that there was a lot of focus on the commercial side initially in OpenStack about how do you install OpenStack, but not how do you automate it and run it over the long term. And there were some companies that did start to focus on that, and they have been successful commercially. But what about the open source tooling? Are we going to get that kind of tooling on the open source world? And the answer is yes. That's actually if you look at the projects that have had the most increase in development activity, there are two projects that are at the top of that list. One is called Kolla, K-O-L-L-A, and the other is called Openstack Helm. And both of those products or projects are pure open source implementations of an automated OpenStack control plane. And so it handles both the initial setup, it handles ongoing upgrades, it handles scaling it out, it handles restarting services that fail, and all these kinds of things. And what it does is it takes those control plane services, puts them into containers, and then deploys and manages those containers. The Kolla project has, I would say, in this year, it kind of got to a state of maturity where I've seen companies running it in production. It's not, I wouldn't say it's the most common deployment method yet, but it's definitely at that state. The OpenStack Helm project has come out of AT&T and SK Telecom in South Korea and SAP. And it's I think that it's just about getting to kind of a 1.0 type release. AT&T is running it in production internally, but it is a fully automated lifecycle tool for managing an OpenStack control plane. So with both of those projects, I see a lot of activity and a lot of promise to deliver what you're asking for in a completely upstream way from the project. So that's really exciting for me because it's definitely something that we need.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. That's all our question. Do you want to say anything else to these guys? They are so tired. So thank you very much for your attendance.
Yes, well, thanks for letting me join, and I hope that I can make it back there in person, and you have fewer technical difficulties when you're there in person instead of over WebEx.
Yes.
So thanks.
Yes. Thank you very much. Bye bye. Have a good day.
Thanks. You too.